Hey, everybody. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Launch School Podcast. The conversation you're about to hear was recorded October 2019. It's now March 2020. Sasha's journey, what you're about to hear, is one of the most unique stories we have at Launch School. And for that reason, her story is one of my favorite. It's unique in that she came to Launch School very early on in January 2016 and finished Capstone in January 2019. That's 3 years. She did land a job as a software engineer in San Francisco, making well above $100,000. Now, that outcome is quite typical for us at Capstone. But what's atypical is that she had to overcome almost every obstacle you can imagine to get there. Like myself, she's an immigrant. But unlike me, she came to the US by herself without friends or family and had to work minimum wage retail jobs just to get settled in. I get a lot of inquiries around whether one can launch a great job, get a great job, not just to get your foot in the door job. Can that be possible if they have some weird condition, like no college or no work experience or too old or too young? So it's my sincere hope that listening to Sasha's journey gives some inspiration and maybe a blueprint for making that transition possible, no matter what obstacle you have. So that's why her journey is unique, but it's also very universal. So I really hope you enjoyed the conversation and enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Launch School Podcast, where we discuss education, programming, and how to build a rewarding career in software engineering.
Welcome to another episode of the Launch School Podcast. Today we have Sasha Prodan, who is another Capstone grad. And when did you finish Capstone, Sasha?
Hi everyone. I finished Capstone. I think it was this January.
2019.
Yeah.
And then a few months of job hunt, and then now you're. Do you want to just tell people where you're working and what you're doing?
Sure. So right now I'm working at Game Time United. This is a company that sells tickets for sports and music events. I'm a backend engineer, and I have been working at this company since this May.
This May, yeah. So it's been about 5 months or so, roughly speaking,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area.
Yes, I'm in San Francisco.
Okay. And just quickly, kind of for those sort of earlier in the Launch School program who may be wondering about this, what's your day-to-day like in terms of work? What technologies and stack are you working with? What is it like sort of being a software engineer in San Francisco?
Mm-hmm. So I work 5 days a week. Sometimes we can work from home if we have some errands to do or like some family stuff. Also, we have like remote team in Portland. So I think I think sometimes you can work they allow like to work remotely too. Mm-hmm. My day starts from 10 p.m. till like 6 p.m. But
or 10 a.m. right?
Huh?
10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah, did I say 10 p.m.?
Yeah. I might be working with like European engineers or something if you're working night shift.
Yeah, from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m., but the schedule is pretty flexible, so you can come earlier if you want, and then leave earlier. But of course, we have, at our company, we have such a thing as sprint. Sprint takes like 2 weeks, and so in the end of the sprint, sometimes we have to ship like a lot of stuff, and if we like short on people or something, so we sometimes have to stay later, but that's okay. So our company uses microservices architecture, and so we have like numerous microservices, and so some of our services are written in Python, some of them are written in Go, some of them are written like a Node in Ruby, and
wow, just everything.
Yeah, so at Launch School, I only learned like Ruby and JavaScript, but now like I have to deal with like multiple languages. And besides languages, there are other technologies. Like for example, we use Elasticsearch, we use Redis, we use Postgres, we use MongoDB. So there's a lot to learn and a lot of opportunities like to grow.
Yeah, I just actually recently published an article that talks about this point exactly, which is a topic around just-in-time learning and how important that is for one's career, right? You have to be able to step into a role and just kind of learn the technology stack that your current company or team is using. And no matter what it is, it could be something that you're completely unfamiliar with.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
way you can do that is if you have strong fundamentals. Like you can't just, go learn Python if you have no programming background. That's going to be too hard.
Yeah. And so I think like what I noticed that starting at launch school is not only about like learning languages, technologies, and like fundamentals. It's also about learning how to learn and learning stuff quickly. Because and of course about fundamentals. Why? Because once you have fundamental knowledge of what a function is, what a variable, it's a fundamental knowledge or concept which you find in every programming language. And so it doesn't matter what language you have to learn at your future job. But once you know what variable is, what the function is, what's the return from the function, all these like fundamental things, you start learning a new language, and you just have to like kind of learn syntax, and that's it. I mean, like of course the specific of the language too, but you already know like what to look for, what to pay attention to. You already know like, so I have to know how does the function return in this language, like how do you define a variable and all this stuff. So you already kind of have a path, and it's not that scary to learn a new language or another new language. Like so right now, I write code like in Go, in Ruby, in Node, like so I already like listed all this functions.
Right. And that really is the only way forward if you want to have a successful career, in that it's impossible to know everything, right? There's this, sometimes beginners are like, there's so much to know, and how do I internalize all this stuff? How do I gain all this knowledge before I'm qualified? And the answer is you don't. You have to have enough strong fundamentals so that you can do just-in-time learning at work. But too many people sort of try to bypass the fundamentals and say, just give me a chance. I'm eager and enthusiastic, and if you give me a chance, I'll learn Python and Go and Ruby and JavaScript at work. Mm-hmm. Even though they truly believe that, they don't have the skills to execute that. So focusing on fundamentals really unlocks this ability to pick up new things. So I'm glad that you're seeing that at work and experiencing that firsthand, right? Otherwise, it's impossible to learn all these things and then get a job. That's too many pieces of technology to possibly digest.
I just wanted to add that, yes, and especially now, it can come and go, but currently, for example, like microservices is a very popular architecture the companies use. And it's just like you don't have that time, even if you're going to study. Like I'm trying sometimes to do that, but it's not working out very well. But even if you, like, for example, if you have to know like a lot of technologies at your work, you can study like even after work, you can study like on the weekend. It's still not enough time to cover everything for this microservices architecture. And so even people, like sometimes I was like, before I was scared that, oh my God, like there are people like, there are like more gifted, like there are programmers that are more gifted than me, and they like catch everything like so quickly, like I'm not gonna make it or something. But I still like, so I'm surrounded with like engineers who have been working or have been like in the field like for 10 years, for 5 years. They still don't know something in particular language, or don't know something even about our own architecture, and it's fine. They just ask questions and stuff. It's just not possible to know everything and be an expert in everything.
Yeah, it's not knowledge. You have to have some prerequisite knowledge for sure, but it's really about, you can understand and learn new things as you need. Now, I want to talk about that. I'm glad you brought it up, because you said that, it wasn't the easiest journey for you, and I want to talk about that journey. But before we do that, and I've been asking all our guests this season of the podcast to share their salary if you're willing, or give a hint as to where you're at, just to, provide some information regarding the type of job you're at. Are you willing to talk about that a little bit in terms of how much you make in terms of salary, base salary? Or give a hint as to what it is, a ballpark?
Yeah, I would just say that it's about 100,000 a year. And I would just like to vouch that if you guys like want to know the numbers, like you can go to Launch School website, and I can vouch for those numbers, because
on our results page you're talking about, like launchschool.com/results.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So right around there, yeah. That, and again, that's I think just to show that it's a good job. Again, salary isn't everything, but it's a proxy for a good job, right? That's how we describe it in the ballpark it. So you're in a great situation now. You're in San Francisco, living it up. Working at a really interesting startup and just working on really interesting technologies and learning. All the things that I think a lot of people earlier in the launch school program are trying to get to, right? A situation that people are trying to get to. So how did you get here? Like, take us through sort of the process from the very beginning, right? Because it wasn't necessarily like the easiest path for you.
No, for me it wasn't. Well, it wasn't either. Even from the beginning when I came to US, I am originally from Ukraine, and so I came to US like.
How many years ago was that, roughly?
So it was in 2008.
Okay, so about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. So and I would like to point out that I came here without my family. My family still lives in Ukraine. Meaning like I didn't have any help. I didn't have anyone to rely on. So I had to provide for myself, and also like I'm a woman. For women, it's usually like harder to get jobs. I mean, or like to find good jobs, like or to make like a lot of money. And also like I didn't have. So I'm still not a citizen. I'm a resident, and so I started working as any immigrant, like working all sorts of jobs. Like I worked at the restaurants, I worked at the grocery stores, small and then at supermarkets. Like before launch school, I started working at a bank.
Did you go to school at the time, or was it just working?
Say it again.
Were you going to school at the same time, or was it just working?
No, I couldn't afford going to school. First of all, like financially, because as an immigrant, you can't make that much money, even for the college. Sometimes you don't qualify for the financial aid. But also, even if I would go to school, I couldn't because I had to work. Like even like to pay my rent and all my bills, I had to work, and the pay was not that good. So like if you make like $20 an hour, you can afford like working maybe 20 hours a week, depending on your expenses, of course. But I'm just saying that if you're getting paid like I don't know, like $8 an hour, like $10 an hour, I mean like you have to work like 60, 70 hours.
Just to pay your bills, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just to pay your bills. I'm not like you just don't have time for college, and it's not only like to go to college like for lectures. Also, after college, you have to do a lot of homework, and usually, like 70% of college, it's homework. You don't have time, and also you're always tired because you like numerous hours.
Yeah, it's impossable. It's impossible to.
So I couldn't go to school, though I wanted to. I wanted to get an education, and then after some years, I knew that I need to find something. So some people work like at the bank, they're growing their career there, like at some other places. And it's not what they want to do. It's just like, oh, the job is good. So I just like going with the flow. I knew for sure that I didn't want to go with the flow. I wanted like consciously to have a job. Like I wanted to have a job that I would like to go. So I feel like I like to go to work every day. I don't feel like bored or like I don't feel like, oh my God, I want to get rid of this job. Like I want to find something else. So that was one of the reasons. And also the job or a field where I can grow, like I can grow my career, because I don't like the jobs where you can just like, do your routine every day and that's it. And they don't let you grow. So I was like thinking like, what field should I choose? And I was thinking about programming. But programming, or like as I thought, programming or science was never my strongest, I don't know, skill or quality. And I was not sure. And so I started from trying like different like free tutorials on the internet. And so then I came.
And so just from a timeline perspective, how far along are we now? So when you first came to the US, it was like 11 years ago. So 2008. Where are we now when you're thinking about programming?
Well, you mean like in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, was it 2008 that you were already kind of had some very, very initial thoughts about learning to program, or was it like working for a couple of years and then, that thought started to come into your head?
No, after I came to US, it was like 5 or 6 years passed.
I see.
So
So just survival at first, right? Just kind of,
yeah, yeah.
get settled, build a little bit of, work as hard as you possibly can and build a little bit of a bank account. And then so maybe around 2013 is when you started thinking about, okay, maybe I can do better than just work it.
Yeah, so time
Okay.
to move on. Yeah, I felt a little bit like, like safer, better, and I started working at the bank, so it's
Okay.
like a better job. And I was thinking I want to do something serious with like my career and future and stuff. And so maybe like 5 years ago, I started thinking about going into software engineering field.
Okay. Gotcha. Yep. So about 2013, 14 is when you really started to
Yeah, yeah,
identify maybe programming as a career that you want to intentionally navigate into as opposed to just whatever job falls in your lap.
right.
Okay. And where were you at this point in the US?
I was in Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, great. Yeah, it's finance center. So, and so how did you? So we're now in 2013, 14 range. How did you first explore programming? Did you have any background in it? It didn't sound like you had any
No,
programming background prior to that.
yes, I always was like, so my second nature is always have been has been like art. Um, so I used to like, and I used to paint and draw, and I went to the art school. So I would never think, and I always actually thought, and I told my mom, it's like I always had actually bad grades for physics and chemistry at high school, and I always told my mom about chemistry and physics and the science subjects, like it's not my thing, it's
Hmm.
not my strongest, and so I had this mental block as well for the programming. I thought, oh, it's not my thing. I'm
Right.
gonna struggle all the time, even if like I go through the school and stuff. I'm gonna
Right.
struggle, and I wanna like be satisfied at work. I don't wanna struggle every day.
It seems mysterious, right? Programming. It seems like it's only the realm of like people who are nerdy and good at math or something.
Yeah, that's actually, I could tell now that that's actually a huge stereotype.
Hmm.
And also another stereotype is like, oh, programming has something to do with like a lot of math. It's not. If
Yeah,
you like,
computer science can be, but
yeah,
just application
computer
development
science.
programming doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah, so software engineering, like you like, for example, now I don't deal with math at all, and I know a lot of programmers they don't.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, there are companies where you like have to work on very complex algorithms and stuff, and you have to have a very strong knowledge of math. And
So what was your major, or did you go to college in Ukraine before coming to the US, or just skipped it altogether?
no, yeah, I started going to university in Ukraine, but I never graduated.
Okay, so you came to the US before finishing. So and your major was like art or something. It wasn't math or programming related at all.
No, it was arts in the beginning, and then I switched to finance because
Okay. So
I
you're
saw.
not using that at all, basically.
No,
Okay,
no.
gotcha. Okay, so 2013, 14, getting into programming. How did you go about this? I mean, there's so many. You're in a completely different field. You don't have a lot of friends and family. Did you know a lot of programmers that you can speak to, or how did you go about like your initial research and investigation and just getting your feet into it?
Well, I think the initially like because I loved arts and stuff, and I love design, and like when I was in Ukraine, I was very interested in 3D graphics, and my parents even bought the computer because of me and because of my interest, and I started like to play with 3D Max program and Photoshop, and I think that led later to the interest with I don't remember how I came to the web design, but I remember that drew my interest to web design in terms. So I started from front end technologies like HTML and CSS, JavaScript, because I like design things, and it was more like creative. And I always thought like I was one of those people who think like, oh, front end is fun and back end is like probably like boring and not fun. And then I decided, and then I think back then this field started to be like either like not popular, but a lot of activities started to happen in this field. And I think that was a time when a lot of like schools were founded.
Like boot
And
camps, like coding boot camps that you're talking
yes,
about? Yeah,
yes, like
yeah.
coding boot camps. And so I read a lot of blogs, and so there was so much information you couldn't just like avoid it.
Hmm.
And so that got me curious, and I started to do like my research, but I still had that mental block. I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to do programming. I mean, you can play it like I can do something or play with programs or programming in my spare time, like as a hobby, but serious job, like I could never see myself as a programmer or software engineer. And I also had that stereotype that, oh, it's mathematics and stuff and all this science, and I'm so bad in it. And so I needed to decide if I want to do that or not. And so back then, there were like, and still there is a lot, but back then, because a lot of like schools just started like online schools as well, and they all had or offered like free tutorials and stuff. And so I played with these tutorials just to get the feeling what programming is, or like, can I do it, or can I have fun with it? Like, I mean, how does it feel? And so I played with all these tutorials, and so I figured out that it's not gonna. Actually, back then, I figured out that it's not gonna be easy for me still, but I want to do it. I want to do it because I like challenges. I don't like something like that I can get easy, and that would be interesting for me in terms of like that would motivate me to come to work every day, because it's like, oh, what problem I'm gonna work today on, like, or so for example, right now, even after launch on Capstone, some days are not easy for me, like sometimes I take my laptop with me home and I spend some time on the problem that I have to work on at my job because I still kind of struggle, but I like it because it challenges me and it doesn't let me, relax and just, like not moving forward. So, yeah. And so once I decided that I want to go into programming, I thought, okay, now I need a school. And so I was looking for schools, but there were a lot of schools who offered like short, like quick results, like in 3 or 4 months or something. Yeah. And now actually I'm recalling like all the schools offered some projects, like capstone projects or stuff in technology that are gone now. They were hot back then, but
like
now
Angular or something that's
Backbone, Angular, all those frameworks. Oh
I mean,
God,
that's not gone for. I don't want anyone to think Angular's gone. It's just not as hot today as React. But
yeah, they're not gone. Yeah, but no one like pauses about them anymore. I mean, some companies still use them, or right now, like a lot of companies use React. But it's like, I mean, if I knew Angular. Or had some projects in it. I don't think I had many chances to get hired. To be
right.
Hired. And so I didn't like the idea of the. So I didn't believe in their philosophy or in their. There were students who graduated.
It's interesting. How did you recognize that? I feel like there's so many people who can get caught up in the hype and get caught up in the sort of. Prisoner of the moment, right? Because you see what's hot today, and then you like today is React, so it's just you have to kind of swim against the tide, or to just recognize that hey, that's something that changes quickly, right? And there's a fundamental thing here, concept here, right? That you should go for.
Yeah, but because I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on the person, but you have to think about, you want to know the core things, like fundamentals. You don't want to know so for example, you can learn how to drive a car, but if you want to deal with cars, or you want to go into professional, how you say that, motorsports, right? You want to know how the car works, what's under the hood, how the engine operates and stuff. You don't only want to know how to drive a car. And actually, if you ever watch some programs or TV shows with those Formula One racers and stuff, they sometimes fix their cars themselves, or they adjust their. You have to know this stuff if you want to deal with cars. If you're just a driver, for example, if you're just using a website, do you have to know how to make a website? You don't.
Right.
And so I think, but those frameworks, they don't teach you this fundamentals. I mean, these frameworks are made of fundamentals, but you want to know the base, the base stuff, it's
the way I think about it is that these are solutions. And what you want to know is that you want to understand the problems. So you're not actually interested in solving the problem necessarily, but you really want to understand the problem thoroughly, and that as different solutions come out, you can understand them fairly quickly because you already understood the problem.
Yeah,
that's really the key.
Yeah, I think that's also a problem for people who didn't deal with programming because for them it's just like words, like Angular, React, Go, Ruby.
Right.
No, I'm recalling myself when I didn't even like write any single line of code. For me, it were just like buzzwords,
Right.
Ruby, Angular and stuff. I didn't like differentiate like is it so the framework is a solution. A Ruby is a tool, right?
Right. Right.
So you build a solution with Ruby language. You want to know the tool. You don't want to know the solution because you can create your own solution later. Or in order to understand someone's solution, you have to know Ruby.
Right.
And
I get emails all the time, right, where people say, "Hey, I found this other program, not Launchcool, that covers all these things." As you said, it's like a buzzword soup. And it's
yeah,
I noticed Launchcool doesn't. How come? Why? And it's it's hard to reply to that because like what does cover mean? If you spend one day on a topic, is that covering? And most of these buzzwords are solutions, right? They're productivity enhancements, or they're somebody's take on a problem, their solution, their opinionated solution. But it's really about understanding the problem. I think that's so important. I'm glad that you're able to see that. I think it's hard when you're first learning to recognize that. So I guess this is how you ended up at Launch School, right? You somehow were able to sort of bypass, and I mean, any Launch School student I've spoken to has never said we're the first thing they found, right? We're always like the fifth or sixth or 10th or very, very last thing they found after a long research period, just because we get out marketed a lot. So I guess you were able to, again, bypass all those other options, found Launch School, and you started Launch School because it aligned with your learning philosophy, right? That you had for some reason. And so, and when was this? This is still a while ago, right? This is because you were at Launch School for quite a while, just a core curriculum.
yeah. I started launch school officially like January is kind of very January is my month. I started launch school in January 2016 officially, and I graduated like almost like yeah, I graduated from Capstone like this January. So anyway,
That's 3 years.
yeah, 3 years.
3 years total. Wow, that's good. That's a good amount of time.
Yeah, it's a good amount of time, and compared to other students at launch school, like who like finish launch school usually like in half a year or a year, I'm like a veteran.
Well, half a year would be super fast. Half a year, I haven't seen too many, but yeah, about maybe a year or so. Yeah, so I guess, do you want to talk about that, sort of the launch school? Let's talk about the core curriculum first, because even though you found this learning philosophy that sort of matched your initial, your own inclination, it wasn't like a silver bullet. It wasn't like, oh, and then everything magical happened, right? It was still kind of, you still had to work through it. I guess, you want to talk about your experience through the core curriculum and how you were able to stick with it for so long?
Yeah, so once I started like enrolled in launch school in January, I start because like I said, a lot of those boot camps they promise like that you graded like in 3-4 months, and so there was like, and I was kind of like just stepping into programming, not even like software engineering field, but only into programming world, and of course I had these expectations like, well, maybe not three, I'm gonna grade it maybe not in 3-4 months, but maybe like in half a year or something. So I had this expectation that it's going to happen soon, but I was so wrong. So I didn't I realized before starting launch school that programming is not something I am going to be, I can be good or it's going to be easy for me, but I still wanted to do that because I'm just not afraid of challenges and stuff. And so the core curriculum, and I think like later the second part of the program was a bit easier for me, but the first part of the program was like the hardest.
That's common, by the way. That's super common. That's very common.
It's common.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you just start programming.
You just start programming. We just started a little thread. This is internal to you have to sign in to see this, but in our community forums, there's a thread now that's going where people are showing their numbers in terms of their time commitment to each course. And a lot of these are people who have been here for a while and they're almost done with the curriculum. They're showing their numbers. And it's always the first couple courses that eat up most of the time because, you're learning how to learn, you're learning how to think about programming, you're learning how to, just juggle your own time and how to study for a lot of people, right? And that just takes up a lot more time than just memorizing, syntax. So that's a common thing. So yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So that was the hardest part, and now I'm recalling it was 2 or 3 first courses of Ruby, and Ruby is actually either one or the friendliest, the friendliest language for new programmers, or one of the friendliest. But still, it was kind of hard for me.
Still a lot of subtlety there, right? There's a lot of depth behind that sort of friendly syntax.
Yeah, it's a lot of syntactical sugar, but you have to be able to read behind, to read along these lines and understand what's going on like internally. And so yes, and I had like a couple of assessments. So there was the first course of Ruby. There was an assessment, and I think I failed that assessment like twice.
We use not yet in mastery-based learning, but yeah, I get it. And in your case, it is a not yet, right? It wasn't a fail.
Yeah, so and only like the third time I passed, and still like I felt like that was not too strong from my side. So there was a second part of the Ruby course, and I think I also failed only one time, I think.
Not yet, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't like smooth sailing, but I think this is where a lot of people will just like, forget you guys. I don't know what you're doing here. I have, I have my ego to keep, and I'm leaving. What made you keep the course? What made you stay? Because I think there's a lot of options out there. Again, the boot camps that are right there in Chicago, Dev Boot Camp being a big one, but I think they closed. But Chicago, you have a lot of options, right? It's not like you're in the middle of nowhere. Why did you think about sticking with, the core curriculum at launch school?
Well, first of all, like once I started launch school, I was like pretty happy to see that I wasn't wrong about about my choice in terms of like the program structure and the depth of knowledge the program provides. So that's one thing. Another thing, that it's a self-paced program, so not so many people can afford, like some people have families, some people have to work a full-time job, maybe 2 jobs. So you can't afford, like, for example, the Chicago Dev Boot Camp, you had to give up everything in order to study at their school. So with launch school, you can it's a self-paced program. You can find the time whenever you like.
So you were working part-time at the time, or working full-time at the time?
I was working, so I was working full-time, and I was doing launch school. And so sometimes, I had to spend all the weekends on launch school because, of course, I wanted
yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, so I had a boyfriend, and weekend was the only time, and he worked like long hours, and weekend was the only time when we can spend time together, go out somewhere. But there were many times when I told him that, no, I have to study. So it was hard too.
A lot of sacrifice, yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's why I hear that story a lot, people sacrificing family time, and it just makes me feel like, well, we better put things that are worth it, right, in front of people. And they better be worth it from a long-term perspective, right? Not just a gimmick, right? Just learn this and get a job ASAP and get stuck again at another dead-end job, except, now you're building web pages or something. And in my opinion, learning these fundamentals is the real thing that's going to carry you. So whenever I hear people making sacrifices, I just have that in the back of my mind, know the fundamentals, right? Drill those. That's going to be the only thing that's worth sacrificing your time for.
Yeah. So now after these 3 years at launch school, and actually earlier, I start realizing, and I also told my mom many times, it's not only. So what I gained in the end, it's not only the salary, it's not only the job I like to go every day. It's also so I got a profession. Yeah. It's not only all these results, in terms of the job, but I got a profession, meaning I have it, and I can be fired, I can quit, I can do something, but I can always go back into this field and get another job. So what I got in the end is not a short-term result or something.
You have real skills.
Yeah.
And confidence that your skills are marketable.
Yeah. without the university degree, because that's still like a common old stereotype that it's very hard like to find a job or like to be professional or to grow your career if you don't have a degree. And especially, and also the main benefit is like I don't owe that much money worth buying a house, you know.
You make enough money to pay it back, right? Our fee. I think going back to what you said about the career, I think that's so true. I think ultimately it's, you know, we use salaries to, I think, just to convey the class of jobs we're aiming for, right? It's not really the specific salary number. And the thing that I really want to impress upon people is about freedom, right? It's confidence and it's freedom. Freedom to be intentional about where you want to drive your career, about where you want to go. If you say, I don't want to work in San Francisco anymore, then you can go work elsewhere. But that's your intention later when you have skills and the confidence to do so. And also at work, your day-to-day job experience is hugely affected by how confident you feel at work. It's not good enough, in my opinion, to get a programming job where you feel like you might get fired at any moment and you feel like you're working out of fear. That to me is not a good place. I don't care how much you get paid. That is not a job worth vying for. That's not a goal worth working towards, because you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to like it. You don't feel like you have freedom to move around, even if it's a high paying job, right? But it's maybe one of those things where like, you know the CEO personally, and if that CEO leaves, your job is done, right? That's not an empowered situation. So developing skills that allow you to feel empowered, that's the absolute key. And by the way, that comes with higher salaries, right? So salaries are a proxy for that type of job. And most programming jobs are not that. Most programming jobs are like change the website, do a little, fixing here and there, and it's low paying. And again, low paying is not the key. The key is that you're just not in an empowered situation. So for everybody that's in Capstone and Launch School, I'm just, this is where we're going. That's why our curriculum is so rigorous. That's why we interview people from the start, right? We're aiming there. I wanted to ask you about so the first couple, I wanted you to maybe just wrap up your core curriculum experience before we talk about Capstone. How long did that journey take you, the core curriculum? Roughly.
The core curriculum took me, I think, like 2.5 years.
2.5 years, yeah. And that's you had to work and juggle all that, full-time job. So it really pushed that duration out. I get asked this question so much, and there are people who can finish in 6 months, but there are also people who finish in 2.5 years, right? Like that, right. It just depends on a lot of personal situation, but you have to pass all the assessments with mastery, according to us, and however long it takes, kind of thing, right?
I just wanted to add that, so I was thinking about that, like when I just started Launch School and I saw that like students like finishing Launch School in half a year. And you should understand also, like, you don't know that student personally. You don't know what's going on in his life or her life. Mm-hmm. You have your own life. So that student probably maybe lives with parents, and he or she, no, I mean, like he or she can afford not working a job or something. And so he can afford like to spend full time on Launch School.
Right.
But some people cannot. Like me, I couldn't. I had to work. Like some people, like I already said, like have kids and stuff. And so for you, it's probably gonna take longer, but that's fine, because like I was in the beginning, like I thought that, I'm so bad, like I'm so slow and stuff. But that's not the
slow and steady gets the award at the end. Slow and steady, or and you don't know their backgrounds either. We've had people that come from other boot camps, and then come to us. I mean, and if you come with no prior experience, you're going to be not know as much as them. Or we have working developers, right? People who've been working for a couple of years. We have computer science grads. I mean, it's just everyone's so different that it's you don't need to compare the speed with which people go through the curriculum, but just compare your understanding at each point. I think that's the most critical factor. Okay, let's talk about Capstone real quick. So you did Capstone. That also wasn't necessarily the smoothest experience, and that's pretty normal actually for Capstone. But do you want to just talk about that real quick, your Capstone experience?
Yeah, so Capstone, I actually would go through that experience again, but though it was very painful for me, it was very hard for me because we had, and actually it paid off later as I realized, so once we decided like what we're gonna do, we had to work with or like to learn some new technologies like pretty fast. And yeah, so Capstone was like kind of was very tough for me, and it was hard like in terms of the schedule and knowledge. But in the end, actually Capstone helped me to get where I am now.
Yeah,
So,
Capstone is basically just-in-time learning. So we have mastery-based learning through the core. You build up your strength and fundamentals, and then we basically transition into just-in-time learning, which is the type of learning that employers are looking for.
mm-hmm.
Right? And because when you go to work now, it's like, hey, Sasha, we're doing this in Go, and I know you don't know Go, but take a week, right? And
Yeah, actually, Capstone, what like I had mentioned before, I realized that when I started to work at my current job, I realized that it was very tough and hard. I never consumed that much information before for like in a short term. And but actually, Capstone helped me a lot. Like right now, I realize the benefit of the Capstone. One of the benefits is that you can consume so much information like for 2-3 days, and you don't have like to spend like 2 weeks or 3 months to like to solidify your knowledge and stuff. And yeah, Capstone was a very good experience, and I think one of the best things that happened to me because it's also like it taught me like a lot of things, like how to look for a job, how to talk to people, how not to be afraid to speak like in public. Though I'm not the best, not even the best. I'm not good in public speaking at all, and plus the English is not my second language. But it forced me to do all those things, to try new things, to get out of my comfort zone, and I'm very grateful for that because it's very useful, and you will understand the benefit of it at your work, and it's going to help you a lot.
yeah, I think this is really the key. And I know that, again, I get emails where people just list this giant bullet point of buzzwords. But actually, the two most important skills that you'll learn at Launch School, one is just learning how to learn it through the core, learning how to really deeply learn a topic and taking your time to do so, and identifying and having a respect for fundamentals, and just knowing that if you have mastery of fundamentals, it really unlocks everything else. And then in Capstone, besides the technical topics, the sort of meta topic that you learn in Capstone is this confidence to being able to perform a robust just-in-time learning, right? For the specific goal that you're trying to achieve, right?
Yeah.
Whatever goal it is, you can do just-in-time learning in a very, very short amount of time, as long as you have strong fundamentals, right? Like there's a prereq there. So yeah, these two things are absolutely key. I really admire your journey. I feel like your story. So first of all, we basically were Tea Leaf Academy many years ago. Prior to 2016, we were Tea Leaf Academy, and we operated slightly differently. And I wrote a blog post about this, so I won't get into it now. So people can basically Google like from bootcamp to mastery. If you punch in those words, you'll find a Medium blog post that we wrote that outlines our history and journey. But in 2016 is when we launched Launch School. So you were here in the beginning, January 2016. I mean, you were here from the start.
I feel like a part of the family because I didn't mention that, but actually when I just started like searching for a school, I found you guys. But back then when I found you, you were still Tea Leaf Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was already like considering like to enroll into Tea Leaf Academy. And then I went to Ukraine, I came back, and you guys turned into Launch School.
I think it's a lot better. It's far more rigorous. Anyway, that blog post lists the reasoning behind why we made this change. We did operate in a very bootcamp-like fashion in the past, making the same mistakes that all the bootcamps make, but we decided that wasn't good enough, so we changed to Launch School in a completely different pedagogy after years of teaching people and taking everything we learned and building this program around a mastery-based learning pedagogy. So you're there from the very beginning, and even till today, I feel like your journey is one of the most unique. And one of the reasons for that is because of the duration, how long you were with us, and how you stuck with it. It's not uncommon to not yet the first couple assessments a couple times. Mm-hmm. It is uncommon to keep going, and the fact that you have this amazing perseverance, and also The fact that, and again, I get a lot of emails like this. So people say, hey, I'm so-and-so and I have this issue. And the issue is usually like, I'm too young or I'm too old or I don't have a college degree or I have a PhD. Is that going to look bad? Right? Like the emails I get are just, if you put them together, they seem contradictory because they're concerned about like opposite things along the same spectrum. Right? Or, I'm a woman or I don't have any programming experience. I feel like you have so many obstacles. You have like all those things, right? All those obstacles were in your way, right? You didn't have family and friends to support you. Even you had to work, retail jobs, college, no college degree, right? Like every obstacle was in your way.
Yeah, and I also have this mental blocks. Like I thought, like programming is not my thing.
Yeah, programming's not your thing, and yet you persevered. And it reminds me of the advice I usually give people, and I say, don't get, there's two qualities you need to have to be successful at launch school. One is don't give up. Two is follow instructions, right? Like if you don't give up and don't follow instructions, that's not good because you're just kind of going down the wrong way. But make sure to follow instructions that we give you and also just don't give up. And really that's it. Like that's what you've done. And I really admire your immigrant story too, because I'm also an immigrant. So I know when I was going through elementary school, my mom worked like 14-hour days as a waitress, making basically $5 an hour, and while my dad was going to school. And it's impossible to invest in your long-term future. So it took both of them to do that, like two people, right? And with one person, it's nearly impossible, right? In the case of my parents, one was investing in long-term, going to grad school, and then one was just like paying the bills, working a waitressing job. And they did that for many, many years. And it just took forever to build up any little amount of savings. And then, so my upbringing was sort of like grew up in the projects, the poorest of the poor. And then once my dad got to finish his PhD, went to middle class and then upper middle class. And I went to like a private high school. I went from these really rough neighborhoods to a private high school, and I saw the friends that I made from childhood, from elementary to the friends I made in high school. They're not too different in terms of their ability to learn and their intelligence and all these things, right? It's not, but the difference was really in their opportunity and in their the support they received. I feel like it's just very hard to do what you did, but it's possible. Right. And I feel like I want people to know that if you're in a situation where you're kind of in this cycle of poverty, you're not alone in that there's people that have broken out before. Right. And I'm just trying to speak to individuals. I'm not trying to speak from like a policymaker perspective, like, just work your way out, even though all the system is against you. Not saying that, just saying from an individual advice perspective. Right. You can do it. May not be easy. But you can do it.
That's what I would like to say to all the students who like have these mental blocks or like doubt themselves they can make it at launch school and stuff. One of the things I would say that sometimes I look at the people who have something, like they have like when I just came to this country, I saw people like who had better jobs, like better salaries, better life, and I was thinking, am I worse than that person? Probably not. I mean, like, we just different, right? I have like different knowledge, different background. That person has different background too. But in terms of like, I can also have those things. I can also have a good salary. I can also have like a good job. Like, what does it take to get those things, So, and all it takes is your work and effort. And of course, because some people already have some support from their families or because they were born in this country and stuff, they have easier path to get those things. You probably gonna have like a harder path, like a longer path, but you can get there too one day. And it's just like this thought never left my mind. And I thought like one day I can have those things too. It's just like, it's not going to happen today. It's not going to happen tomorrow, maybe not in a year, but one day it's going to happen. And I was like imagining myself and I said, I want to have that life, or I want to have that salary. Otherwise, if I'm not going to make that step now, I'm going to stay where I am. And that's not what I want. And also, if you don't try, you can try and the worst thing can happen, you fail. But if you don't try, how do you know if you succeed or fail? So like one of the mottos in my life I have, it's always better to try and fail than not try.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm having taught so many students, I've started to recognize that it's unimportant where people are at in terms of their knowledge and skill set. Because a lot of people say, "Hey, I've read these books, or I have this experience, or I can do this and that. Do you think I'll be successful? What do you think what do you think will happen to me at the end of the curriculum?" Right? They'll ask me before signing up. What I've realized is that's actually not too important. It's what's important is the trajectory. When you meet somebody, it's not what they know or don't know. It's really what is their trajectory? What is the angle of their trajectory? So, like meeting you when you first started to learn a program and joining launch school, I don't think anybody would have been impressed by what you knew at that point in time, right? In terms of about engineering. But I can tell right away that the trajectory that you were on is a very steep slope. Like you were going up. And the reason why I knew that is because when you got a not yet, you were just like, okay, I'll come back, right? You didn't get defensive. You didn't say, well, I'm out of here, see you later. You said, okay, I will study. Tell me what to study. I'll go do it. And I'll do it twice as hard. And, I'll come back and take the test again, right?
Right.
That attitude is actually the most important thing, because if you have a steep trajectory, a steep slope on your trajectory, given enough time, that is going to overpower what you know, how much you know. So if you know a lot, but your slope is very shallow, right? It's just going, it's a horizontal line. Somebody who doesn't know as much as you but has a steep slope is just going to overtake you. And that's happened over and over and over. I've seen that happen. And so whenever I meet new students nowadays, it's just about that, right? So I try to say things like, it's really about your ability to study, right? It's really about your ability to not give up. It's perseverance. It's these things. And so that's why I try to do my best to express that, in the prep course. And again, it's not really about like, what you know at this point in time. It helps a little bit, but really the slope, right, of your trajectory, that's the key. All right, well, before we go, any lasting words? I think you already gave some advice, but any sort of last advice for people earlier in the launch school curriculum, or maybe even prep, before they even started launch school, or people in the 101, 109 range? Any advice for people like that?
Well, for people, so I have one advice for people who just started launch school, for example. So once you enrolled in launch school, just trust the process, I would say. Never, yes, you might have questions here and there, and you have doubts and stuff, in terms of not only your abilities, but launch school program and instructions. But after 3 years at launch school, and like I mentioned before, I was growing with launch school together, and I went through the Capstone, and now I'm working a full-time job, very good job, highly paid job as a software engineer. And I can say with confidence, just trust the process. Once you enrolled at launch school, just trust the process, follow the instructions. Even if you have doubts, believe me, you will get there. For people who start launch school already and they are in early courses, well, the only advice I would say, don't give up. And also, it will teach you not only it's not only about learning programming, but going through these assessments, it will teach you to overcome the problems even at your future job. Because like I said, programming is not something it's the set of stuff, the set of tasks you have to do every day, and it's always the same tasks every day. It's a new day for a software engineer, because sometimes it's not going easy, not for every engineer. Even if you just started in the field, like I said, even experienced engineers, they sometimes have problems they cannot solve today. So if you have trouble to go through the early courses, don't give up. Just go through them. If you need, just step aside, take a break, maybe a day or something. And if you need to spend more time on something, just spend that time. And I know when you just start, I have been there too, when you start launch school and you constantly thinking, oh, I have to spend more time on studying, so I can get a job as soon as possible. This rush makes things worse for you. So, I mean, spend as much time as you want, but don't have this like subconsciously or mentally in your mind that you have like to speed up the process. And if you struggle and you have to spend like more time on some topic or something or an assessment, just take your time. It's gonna pay you back. It's gonna pay you off in the long run. In the 2-3 years, you'll see that and you'll say, "Oh my God, she was right," or like, "I didn't see that back then." Mm-hmm. So
yeah. Thanks for that. That's great. So thanks so much for stopping by the podcast, Sasha. Happy to have you share your story. I think it's super motivational and inspiring. And have a good weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Launch School podcast. Check back for new episodes and don't forget to like, subscribe, and review.